I can handle the truth, but I wanted to see if I could handle the untruth. So I watched over 20 fake documentaries full of trickery, lies, and deception, and I lost my goddamn mind. You'll understand why once I share everything with you, starting with Animal Planet's mermaid documentary broke reality and their reputation. In 2012, the same channel that introduced a lot of us to Steve Irwin aired Mermaids: The Body Found, a documentary claiming mermaids are real and the US government is covering it up. It comes out swinging from the first minute. Listen to this very serious and totally real scientist.
As a scientist, I was never a believer in conspiracy theories. I believe Al-Qaeda was responsible for the 9/11 attacks. I believe we landed on the moon. And I believe Oswald shot JFK.
Wow, a great start. Basically saying all your conspiracy theories are lame as hell compared to this. Ours has fish tits, so let's dive in. Looks like something in the ocean is taking out all these whales, and these gnarly deep sea spears are starting to surface too. What could be the meaning of this? Then inside the belly of a shark are the bits and pieces of digested mermaid meat. With these remains, scientists are able to prove the aquatic ape theory. You know the one, where us humans started in the ocean, moved to the land and become hominids, then some of those guys pulled an Uno reverse card and got right back in the water to become mermaids. And it's apparently these mermaids with their sonar blasts who are the cause of these whale carcasses floating up on beaches. Why do mermaids hate whales? Don't worry about it. This doc can't even get its fake facts straight because it later says mermaids associate and even migrate with the whales. The film makes no effort to clarify it's all fiction other than these vague disclaimers at the very end of the credits. Plenty of viewers missed it, including this Letterboxd user who said, "I believed this in 7th grade and did a presentation about it." The channel later admitted the film is science fiction, but what cracked me up was that the filmmakers truly invented a fake scandal for ratings and pinned the blame on a real science agency. At every turn in the movie, every bit of mermaid evidence gets confiscated, and each time the fake scientists look straight at the camera and are like, "It was the dang National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration again. Someone's gotta stop them." This is a real government agency who, because of this fake doc, got real complaints about covering up mermaids and were forced to make a statement saying mermaids don't exist. If that wasn't wicked enough, the fake doc's premiere led to Animal Planet's best week of viewership in years, dethroning Steve Irwin's memorial tribute. And the executives all agreed they needed to keep the farce going. Next came a sequel, Mermaids: The New Evidence.
Next Sunday, an interview with Dr. Paul Robertson, where new evidence of mermaids will be revealed.
Oh my God! And Megalodon the Monster Shark Lives on the Discovery Channel, which in terms of ratings blew every other Shark Week program out of the water. I think history will look back on Mermaids: The Body Found as a turning point for a network that was once celebrated for its educational programs, deciding it was more profitable to trick their viewers than to teach them. If you're struggling to get your low-budget movie noticed, have you considered launching the greatest marketing campaign of all time? Because that's exactly what two guys fresh out of UCF's film school pulled off with the Blair Witch Project, a $30,000 experiment that turned into a $250 million movie phenomenon and one of the greatest success stories in indie film history. This horror film was presented as recovered footage from the camcorder of 3 film students who vanished while investigating the local legend of the Blair Witch. And its marketing campaign blurred fiction and reality so well, it became a story all its own. In 1999, the internet had never been used like this to promote a film before. A website for the movie began circulating with what looked like a true crime file dump. Missing persons flyers, photos, journal entries, police reports, fake timelines, and just enough ambiguity to make it all seem real. It was nothing short of revolutionary, with the website racking up over 100 million views. They didn't just stick to an online strategy either. A fake documentary about the fake documentary aired on the Sci-Fi Channel called Curse of the Blair Witch, laying out the true story behind the Blair Witch, giving this campaign the ultimate 1-2 punch of new and traditional media. It became a sprawling ARG before that term even existed, making these fictional students feel like the latest victims in a centuries-old legend. And their commitment was insane. These actors were hidden from the press, with the film's IMDb page even listing them as deceased for a while. Everything was so fleshed out that when it was time to buy a movie ticket, most were genuinely unsure if this was real. And are we overlooking the most important part? The movie was good. It was so good. Take the marketing out of the equation and it's still on my Mount Rushmore of found footage films. Most of the complaints I've seen are that the characters are annoying. But y'all, if I was lost in the woods, slowly going insane, walking for days in an endless circle, slowly starving as my food supply dwindles, knowing that nightfall is coming soon, but there's nowhere I can hide and nothing I can do other than the last thing I want to do, which is just get our tent set up again and spend another night in a pitch black playground of evil, I would be insufferable. Rarely have I seen a movie that makes me feel the spiraling terror and confusion and helplessness of its characters like this one. And to accomplish all this with basically no budget, no big name cast, without really any jump scares, and zero expensive special effects, this low budget beauty was pure creative witchcraft. It's bittersweet knowing that we'll probably never get a movie marketing campaign like this ever again, but I'm grateful that this once in a lifetime swing went to a movie that is deserving of it. Who remembers the opening scene of Penguins of Madagascar? A documentary crew films 3 penguins standing on the edge of an icy cliff. The narrator says if they were to fall off, the penguins would surely die, followed by the line,
Gunther, give them a shove.
would you believe this is based on a true story? White Wilderness was an entry for Disney's True Life Adventure series, best remembered for its infamous segment about lemmings, the little rodents with a boatload of lore that's both true and untrue. Lemming populations grow extremely fast every few years, and in the 16th century, the way people made sense of this was that lemmings must be literally falling out of the sky. Even after this explanation was proven untrue, it was still believed for a long time that lemmings would self-correct overpopulation by offing themselves. This myth was popularized with this Disney doc, which showed lemmings hurling themselves into the ocean. White Wilderness went on to win the Oscar for Best Documentary in 1959, and it took more than 20 years before the dark truth was revealed. Nothing about that scene was true. This segment wasn't even filmed in the Arctic wilderness. It was shot in Canada, where lemmings are not native, so the crew shipped them in. And these lemmings were not offing themselves to tamper population growth. It was the filmmakers from Out of Frame pushing them off the cliff. Suddenly, lines like this take a much darker tone.
It's not given to man to understand all of nature's mysteries.
Wow. Nature sure has some unexplainable mysteries. Now excuse me while I yeet these helpless little guys off a cliff. John Green has a great bit about this scandal in his book, The Anthropocene Reviewed, where he says that White Wilderness wasn't really a documentary about nature, but a documentary about us and the lengths we will go to hold on to a lie. Can you eat McDonald's for every meal for 30 straight days? In 2004, Morgan Spurlock sacrificed his health to find the answer. His documentary Super Size Me tracked this first-person experiment as he consumed nothing but McDonald's food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a full month while doctors monitored the fallout. This extreme diet quickly leads to extreme side effects for Morgan. In just 30 days, he had gained 25 pounds. He dealt with mood swings, vomiting, and liver damage, the likes of which his doctors said they've only seen from alcoholics. And the impact of the documentary can't be overstated. This was played in every health class. It was the 7th highest grossing documentary film of all time. It made Morgan Spurlock a household name. It even made McDonald's revamp its menu, cutting the Super Size Me option just weeks after the documentary's premiere. Super Size Me also addressed the growing concerns of an obesity epidemic, pointing a big portion of the blame at the fast food industry for its marketing towards kids. Maybe that's why fast food architecture isn't fun anymore. His experiment sent the health world into a frenzy, and people wanted more information from Morgan, like his food logs, medical reports, any actual data. But he kept everything sealed as if he was hiding something. We finally learned why after other filmmakers made counter documentaries doing the same self-experiment, then showing no signs of liver damage, with some even losing weight from this diet, making Morgan's results highly suspicious. 13 years later, he finally admitted that throughout the whole production, he was drinking heavily, as he had for years before Super Size Me as well, which explained the liver damage and made the whole experiment scientifically useless. This is an interesting case because the documentary wasn't fake. Morgan did genuinely do the 30-day experiment, but his results were so misleading, I had to mention it in this video. And damn it, Morgan, don't make me side with McDonald's. We should have seen this coming. The movie's production company is literally named The Con. At what point would you consider cannibalism? For me, it was about 5 minutes into the British Miracle Meat from 2023. Enthusiastic food TV personality Greg Wallace takes us on a cheerful tour of the new age food company Good Harvest, who are proudly selling affordable, lab-grown meat sourced from human flesh. With the cost of living crisis squeezing families, and the UK finally free from the EU's oppressive laws, why shouldn't we harvest the flesh of 67-year-old retiree Julianne? For every pound of flesh donors contribute, they get 2 weeks of energy bills paid off, and shoppers get delicious meals for only a third of the price of a ribeye. What's not to love about this win-win situation? Good Harvest's packaging even comes with tasting notes, aka fun facts about the donor's age, career, and location, which raises the question, if someone eats a steak from your butt meat and leaves a 2-star review, is that a personal attack? Greg Wallace is open-minded through it all, fully on board for the human meat meal plan. He's only a little apprehensive about it when learning the new premium cut he taste tested and loved comes from donors under the age of 6. The most tender meat coming to you straight from nature's oven. I mean, hey, the rich have been doing it for centuries, and the concept of eating babies as an economic fix dates back to the 1700s. Food TV programming is such a casual medium, it was a perfect, sneaky vehicle for this dystopian hoax. Because of course, nothing from the British Miracle Meat is real, and surely in the year 2023, no one would fall for this one. Oh, they did. The sharp minds of the Twitter community were really having a fit about this one, with one viewer saying they were so repulsed that they're considering veganism, making this the funniest accidental pro-vegan ad ever made. This documentary rewrote the history of cinema, and people were pissed. A couple years before signing on for The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson was rummaging through a neighbor's pile of old film reels when he stumbled on the lives work of a forgotten cinema pioneer, Colin Mackenzie. In Forgotten Silver, it's revealed that this obscure genius of his time beat everyone to the punch on every single major breakthrough in film history. Colin shot the first color film, made the first talkie, invented the close-up, and pioneered the tracking shot by literally strapping a homemade camera to a bicycle. He even built the first candid camera to film a comedian pieing people and babies in strollers in the face. He was even present to film the real first manned flight 6 months before the Wright brothers, proven in the documentary with a level of digital enhancement the likes of which NCIS could only dream of. What they uncovered was a city of lost films. Truly, they found a lost city in the New Zealand wilderness built by Mackenzie for an unfinished movie of his. This discovery of Mackenzie's legacy flipped the history of cinema on its head and relocated the birth of film to New Zealand, which is why it was such a gut punch for Kiwis when the directors had to go on national television the following day to explain that Forgotten Silver was fool's gold. Colin Mackenzie did not exist. Before the premiere, the seed was planted in an article advertising Peter Jackson's discovery. Then it was aired during a time slot on TV1 that was typically held for serious documentaries. And the bit continues through the credits, never letting up that it's all fictional. When the actor who plays Colin Mackenzie watched the premiere with a neighbor, she sat there absolutely blown away by the extraordinary historical footage, not realizing the guy on screen was sitting in the room with her. They even fooled New Zealand's National Museum, who contacted Peter Jackson asking if they could display Mackenzie's artifacts in a new exhibit. But the signs were there, like the Lost City actually being New Zealand's National War Memorial, which many local viewers probably drove past every day on their way to work. The filmmakers tried to explain that it wasn't a bad thing if you were one of the many who were fooled by Forgotten Silver, and that it was just a sign of a healthy imagination. But plenty were not happy about it. TV1 got so many negative phone calls and letters, calling Forgotten Silver appalling, disgusting, a betrayal. One viewer swore they'd never trust a documentary again. Another promised to throw a brick through their window. And then there was Sue, who wrote, "Peter Jackson and his silver screen conspirators should be shot." And others say they weren't fooled at all, like this woman who said no one could have done all of those things and been named Colin. Before Forgotten Silver, the best known television hoax in New Zealand came from their nightly magazine show Town and Around. A notorious segment claimed in a serious journalistic tone that a poultry farmer solved the problem of turkeys' delicate feet by fitting them with rubber gumboots. They even casually discuss which color boots the female turkeys find appealing on the male turkeys. Here's one wearing men's boots in a size 8. Many viewers believed the segment was legit, calling in to hear more about these gum-booted turkeys. This wildly controversial movie was made by a 22-year-old with $2,000 in a laptop and went on to kind of birth the modern era of conspiracy theory slop we're trapped in today. Originally, Dylan Avery wanted to write a drama about him and his friends uncovering that the 9/11 attacks were an inside job. But being a fictional truth-seeking sleuth wasn't cool enough, and he decided to tell this story as fact. So 20 years ago, Loose Change was uploaded online, claiming that the US government orchestrated the September 11th attacks. It became what Vanity Fair called the first internet blockbuster, mostly because it was free to watch, easy to share, and edited with the breakneck pace of a MrBeast video. According to Dylan, over 100 million people have watched Loose Change to hear some hard-hitting questions, like, why'd this building fall down look like this other building fall down? And every time major claims in the film got debunked, which happened a lot, they just put out a new version with brand new claims that also had to be debunked. As of today, there are at least 7 different versions of this movie. But as the beginning of the doc states, they're doing it all in honor of the people we lost on 9/11, while also claiming that some of those people never existed. A move straight out of the Alex Jones playbook, which tracks because he was brought on as an executive producer for Loose Change Final Cut. I spent days trying to write a longer breakdown for this, but I was completely overwhelmed trying to keep up with all the false claims, which I imagine was the whole point. And I wish I could say only the most gullible people were fooled by this pseudo-documentary, but the truth is many intelligent people were lured in and then encouraged others to watch the movie without going as far to say they believe everything in it.
What do you think? Do you think it's convincing?
It's not so much what they say, it's the things that make you look at what you thought you saw in a different light.
I enjoy Loose Change because it's a gripping, well-made film, but I'm not like, it's true. I don't know if it's true or not.
Has it made you call for a new investigation at least?
No, not at all.
Today, Dylan is still making fictional movies, with his most recent project being Popeye the Slayer Man. And I honestly love this for him. I truly do. It sounds like a fun and, more importantly, harmless movie. I'm down for us to all make more of those. We finally got it, folks. We have video proof of alien life. In 1995, 2 freelance filmmakers, Ray and Gary, contacted Fox claiming they bought old film reels from an ex-US Army cameraman with authentic footage of an alien body from a UFO crash. They would finally share the truth about alien life to the world, whether humanity was prepared or not. Before airing this footage, though, Fox's top dog, Mike Darnell, was skeptical. So he sent the film to Kodak, who came back saying that they couldn't verify if it was real, all they could confirm was that it was old. To which Darnell said, "Works for me." Alien Autopsy, Fact or Fiction aired with Jonathan Frakes reprising his hosting gig from Beyond Belief. This TV special brought so much intrigue and high ratings, so Fox aired it a second time, then a third, with each bringing in millions of more viewers. Because if this were true, it would be the most reality-shattering revelation in human history. The problem was, nobody could verify this footage was legit, and Ray flat out refused to identify the cameraman who shot it. Don't worry, a private investigator is on the case. Look at him, private investigating so good. He managed to uncover that this mystery cameraman would now be 82 years old, married, and have polio. But really, none of this matters. This manhunt made viewers ask who shot the film and forget the original question, is this footage even real? The documentary pulls this trick a lot, mainly with the alien body. They frame this creature as being one of 2 things. It's either a person or an alien. Or, and hear me out on this, more options exist. It could be something else, like a man-made prop. When they do eventually present that argument and toss it over to a Hollywood special effects expert and his crew, this segment is somehow the fakest part of the whole special. They say only an expert in their field could create this, and it would cost thousands of dollars. Yeah. That's exactly what happened. Years later, Fox aired another special exposing their own Alien Autopsy special as fiction with the same executive producer who made Alien Autopsy. This guy got paid to present a hoax and then got paid again to debunk it. Then in a 2006 interview, Ray finally spilled the beans. Turns out the Alien Autopsy footage wasn't shot on film in 1947 near Roswell, New Mexico. It was recorded on video in 1994 in a living room in London. Award-winning special effects artist John Humphreys created the alien corpse and even played one of the doctors in hazmat suits. Everyone else were hired actors, and that mysterious cameraman was just a random guy they found on the street. Ray stuck to his guns though, claiming the real autopsy footage did exist, but the original film had deteriorated too much to be usable, so he had to recreate it. And this big reveal coincided perfectly with the release of a feature-length comedy called Alien Autopsy, based on Ray's own exploits in faking and selling the footage, a film which he had an executive producer credit for. So is the alien autopsy footage real? Go ahead, Jonathan, say the line.
No way. We created it. We got you. Not a chance. It's false. No, not this time. It's totally made up. Pure fiction.
And the crowd goes wild. The Spaghetti Tree hoax was a 3-minute broadcast on April Fool's Day 1957 that reported on a Swiss family harvesting spaghetti from the fictional spaghetti tree. Pasta was not an everyday food in 1950s Britain and was considered an exotic delicacy. So when the Spaghetti Tree hoax aired, hundreds of viewers phoned into the BBC to ask how to grow their own spaghetti trees. The BBC told them to place a sprig of spaghetti in a tin of tomato sauce and hope for the best. The Spaghetti Tree hoax is looked at as one of the biggest pranks that any reputable news establishment has ever pulled. BBC spent their whole existence up until then building a trustful reputation to blow it away on a spaghetti joke. I love it. This is a real-ish documentary about a fake artist, written about by a con artist, documented by a hoaxer. Orson Welles' F for Fake begins with a promise that everything you see in the next hour is completely true, and then throws you into an impossible web of trickery. Without giving away any of the fun twists, cause I suggest you just watch this one for yourself if you haven't already, it starts as a profile of infamous art forger Elmir Tahori, who made a career selling his paintings as authentic Picassos and Matisses to museums and art galleries. This world of schemes only gets deeper during a dinner party when we meet the man writing a biography about Elmir, who, come to find out, had previously written an entirely fake authorized biography of Howard Hughes. This monkey is somehow involved with all the fraud too. Even the movie itself may have been a forgery. It began as a project by Francois Reichenbach until Welles signed on to narrate and edit it. Then he basically hijacked the whole thing and took it in a completely new direction. It doesn't stop there. Welles cut a 9-minute trailer for the documentary, which was in its own way also a con. Although it features the same people and stories of the film, basically none of the footage shown is in the actual movie. Welles, of course, was no stranger to hoaxes. At just 23, he staged the infamous War of the Worlds radio broadcast in 1938, tricking listeners into believing aliens were invading. History says this caused widespread panic, but research suggests those reports were greatly exaggerated, meaning the real hoax was not just the radio broadcast, but also the story of the panic itself. As for Welles, he admits that as a charlatan, my job is to make it real, not that reality has anything to do with it. Some people believe the moon landing was faked and use this movie as evidence without realizing it's making fun of them. The first moon landing was the most important achievement of the 20th century, and President Nixon knew it absolutely had to be filmed for the world to see. But according to one very not real documentary, Dark Side of the Moon, Nixon feared the conditions of the moon would render any film equipment totally useless. So in case of emergency, he secretly hired Stanley Kubrick to film a fake moon landing in a studio in exchange for some state-of-the-art camera lenses he'd later use for Barry Lyndon. The backup ended up coming in handy because while the real Apollo 11 mission succeeded, the footage they got on the surface of the moon was less inspiring thanks to the antics of Neil Armstrong.
Hippity-hoppity, hippity-hoppity, hippity-hopping over hill and dale.
The mockumentary mixes fact and fake so seamlessly, it's hard to tell which is which. Real people like Kubrick's widow and even Buzz Aldrin appear as themselves alongside actors playing totally made-up witnesses named after characters in Kubrick films. They sprinkle in historical facts with easily refutable errors, like the date of JFK's famous speech about choosing to go to the moon being a whole year off, and also stating Nixon was once the governor of California, which he was not. And this moon landing cover-up was successful because basically everyone involved died under bizarre circumstances. Like this man who passed away in a mysterious car accident, his body seen here in this photo, surrounded by a group of Santas. Totally normal. But the biggest giveaway of all has to be the blooper reel that ends the movie, which some journalists ended up missing during the first press screening because they had already left the room in a fit of rage. The real joke came later when conspiracy theorists began citing Dark Side of the Moon as proof the moon landing was faked, not realizing they were the punchline. And even more deliberately deceitful, some folks cut the film into misleading clips on YouTube to expose the truth, further confirming the thesis of the movie. So a fake documentary about the real moon landing became real proof for people who think the moon landing was fake. The 2020 Thanksgiving Day Parade did not happen, at least not the way they said it did, and the documentary Parade of Lies set out to prove this. It starts with the brass tacks. What elements make a Thanksgiving Day parade? For one, it's gotta be Thanksgiving. There's gotta be people singing and moving through the streets of New York City with marching bands and floats and an audience. But in 2020, due to COVID restrictions, the event was pre-taped over 3 days. Marching bands were cut, the musicians who did perform only lip-synced their tracks, no spectators were allowed, and the 2.5-mile parade was reduced to a single city block. Which means they aren't singing, they are barely even moving, nobody's even there, it didn't even happen on Thanksgiving. So what exactly were we looking at? Because by definition, this wasn't a parade. That much is true. But Parade of Lies doesn't stop there. The filmmakers want to know, why keep up the parade charade? According to them, the answer may live beneath the parade route. The heart of the film's bizarre claims center around this map on the official Macy's website. They bring our attention to the F marker, noted as restricted viewing, warning spectators to avoid this section of the parade route. Why? No clue. Macy's is completely silent on this. A second map reveals that this restricted block sits directly above the Herald Square toilet. A thermal scan of that block from the week of the parade shows an unexplained heat trail deep underneath the public restroom, which at that time had been closed down for over 20 years. Parade of Lies suggests that the toilet was actually a tunnel system that was used to house something important. What's moving down there? Nobody knows, but the date of September 14th might give the answer. This is when Mayor Bill de Blasio made the official announcement confirming the scaled down 2020 parade plans. What else happened on September 14th? Scientists detect possible signs of life on Venus. When questioned, the former executive producer of the parade only said, "What I knew about Thanksgiving Day a month ago is different from what I know now." And longtime anchor Al Roker cryptically added, "It may not be the parade we wanted, but this year it's the parade we need." I'm sorry, Al, but that sounds less like parade talk and more like damage control. So essentially the theory here is that the government has been holding all of these alien life forms from Venus inside the Herald Square toilet, and during this 3-day filming period for the Thanksgiving Day parade, they basically Trojan horsed them through this one city block using these giant balloons. And it doesn't help that a few years later, the toilet was reopened after a complete renovation, possibly to close off the tunnel system. With the amount of speculation this doc has generated, the annual Thanksgiving Day parade has had to beef up their security presence year over year. And today, the Herald Square toilet is the sightseeing mecca for conspiracy theorists and confused pedestrians trying to pee. This was deemed the most dangerous television program in the world. Alternative 3 was broadcast just once in the UK in 1977, claiming to have uncovered the disappearance of several scientists, which quickly unravels into a full-blown conspiracy about a secret government mission that is shipping off the world's best and brightest minds to Mars to colonize the Red Planet once Earth becomes uninhabitable due to climate change. The film was a prank that was supposed to be aired on April Fool's Day, but it was delayed until June. The broadcasting delay, paired with the realistic documentary style, the main presenter being a well-known newscaster, and the use of real moments in history, all led people to believe that scientists were really being kidnapped and sent to Mars. Within minutes of the program ending, the network was flooded with calls demanding more information. In response to all the hoopla, a network spokesperson said, "We felt viewers would be fairly sophisticated about it. Callers were told the program was a hoax, but many people still believed it was real, and some still believe it's real to this day."
A sci-fi movie called Alternative 3, kidnapping people and making them colonize the moon and Mars. Funny, huh? Except it's absolutely true.
This documentary was exposed as fake by journalists from the same company that funded it. Lovemobile from 2019 was an honest look at the lives of 2 sex workers in rural Germany who work out of rented neon-lit caravans off the side of a highway. Director Elke Lorencross said it took her years to gain the trust of these women that she was filming, and audiences ate it up. Lovemobile won several prestigious awards for documentary film and was celebrated for showing such a raw, authentic view into the underground world of prostitution that's rarely ever seen. But doubt started to bubble up. Something was off about this documentary, and the first suspicions came from inside the production itself. This is when things start getting messy. Lovemobile was co-produced by broadcast company NDR, who also produce a journalism TV series, Control F. An email landed on their desk from an editor on Lovemobile who was ready to blow the whistle, saying that what she saw in the raw footage convinced her that basically everything in the documentary was staged. She specifically points out one scene related to the murder of another prostitute, which in reality never happened. Control F reporters began tracking down the pimps, prostitutes, and their clients who appear on screen. One after another, they're all revealed to be actors who didn't know the film was going to be presented as real, and when they found out, they felt betrayed. Meanwhile, the director is out there doing interviews saying,
"We didn't have a script or anything. No, not at all. It's not possible. I mean, they are not actors or anything. It's a documentary."
Control F confronts the director, and she admits that the two main characters never worked in the Lovemobiles, and she herself had rented the caravans. Loren Cross insisted that although nothing in the documentary was real, the stories were still true because they were inspired by conversations with real sex workers. But that's just not how documentary film works. When asked why she didn't just disclose that in the movie, she says, "I missed that." This became a full-blown scandal in the German documentary world. The awards Lovemobile had received were retracted, and the film was taken out of circulation. A solution to climate change has been found, and it does not involve launching a cannon at the sun. Scientists have discovered a mammal that prefers exhaust fumes over oxygen and literally eats oil. First discovered in a Czech mining region, the nature doc Oil Eaters captures these little fellas named Pachyrophagus, gulping down sweet petroleum and pooping out clean water. There's even a heartfelt storyline about an injured baby Pachyrophagus getting rescued, nursed back to health, and released back into its shimmering pool of sludge. This aired on Czech television in 1987, and not only did most people believe the Oil Eaters were real, these things became nationwide sensations. Everybody loved them and started calling into the TV station asking where they could adopt one. Oil Eaters were the slug siblings of Little Sebastian. If this were today, I think they'd have Oil Eater Funko Pops. And what a relief that such a serious global problem had such an easy fix. Humans had made a mess of industrial waste, and nature, bless its heart, evolved a cute pet-sized cleanup crew for us. In the Czech Republic, the world was saved for 2 glorious weeks until the film was shown again on TV, followed by a tell-all interview with the folks behind the hoax. Unfortunately, it was all wishful thinking. The Pachyrophagus was just a puppet designed by college graduates. Even if Oil Eaters didn't live in nature, they certainly lived in our hearts. Look at this scientist they invited to the interview. He cannot stop holding the puppet. He loves it so much. Even after the reveal, the movie was still beloved and even went on to win a Student Academy Award. The greatest sport event in Sweden ever was, without a doubt, the 1958 World Cup. The TV documentary Conspiracy 58 is about the people who were there, but most of all, about the people who claim that it never took place at all. Yes, the 1958 FIFA World Cup, in which Brazil, led by a 17-year-old Pele, beat Sweden to claim their first title. That was all supposedly completely faked by the US to test TV's capacity to influence people. The film presents hard evidence, like the players' shadows on the field, which were angled in a way that's not possible in Sweden given the position of the sun at the time. And how intriguing that the buildings in the background of the stadium don't exist in Sweden, but in Los Angeles. One interviewee in the film states, "No reliable witnesses exist to prove that the World Cup was really played." It's a pretty damning theory that makes you question how something so historically significant could be totally made up, until you see at the end of the documentary that everything in it is completely made up. There is no conspiracy theory about the World Cup never happening. The director made all of it up to show how historical revisionism works and the importance of source criticism when getting information, or in modern terms, doing your own research. It's crazy to watch this real footage under the context that it's fake and feel your brain delegitimize what you're seeing. And despite being revealed as a hoax at the end, people still believed it. 20 years later, you can find conspiracy theorists discussing the fake conspiracy theory online, and a lot of the logical fallacies presented in the movie are used to support conspiracy theories today. You can trust me on this. I'm a very reliable source who is totally a real person and not an AI-generated YouTuber. In Search of the Edge was a comprehensive documentary proving fairly conclusively that the Earth is flat. It tells the story of a 16-year-old girl determined to prove to the world that it is flat, who ventured across Antarctica with just a borrowed pair of skis to reach the edge of the planet before vanishing, never to be found. Along the way, a cast of fake scholars explained that Earth isn't round, it's flat, using sound logic like,
"Does running round your neighborhood prove that the neighborhood is round?"
And Earth isn't floating in space, space, it's resting on the shell of a turtle, as you can tell from this cute and silly illustration. And Earth doesn't spin, it bounces up and down. Cause if me dizzy from merry-go-round, then why no dizzy from Earth spin? According to sources, flat Earth believers occasionally mistake this mockumentary as a serious documentary supporting their beliefs. Are these sources credible? Of course they are. I saw it on the internet. More than anything, In Search of the Edge proves that although the flat Earth movement has had a depressing increase in members, it has not evolved much critically in the last 35 years. The hottest film of 1930 convinced viewers that virgins were being sacrificed to gorillas. Ingagi claimed to be real travel footage of American explorers trekking deep into Africa, meeting natives, and discovering some truly unbelievable things. That's right, y'all. New animal just dropped. Introducing the tortadillo, a turtle with glued-on wings and scales with enough venom to kill a dog. But the big ticket scene comes in the last 10 minutes when we meet a tribe that worships gorillas and appeases them by offering up virgin women to mate with, creating half-human, half-gorilla offspring. When Ingagi was shopped around to theaters, most passed because they could sniff it out as a fake. But then, Studio RKO out of nowhere bought the rights, and it became one of the highest-grossing movies of its time as audiences flocked in to see these shocking scenes, believing them to be real. And as Ingagi grew in popularity, industry watchdogs grew suspicious. They found that the two explorers in the film were not real people. This was only the tip of the Ingagi lies iceberg. Everything about this from top to bottom was an utter lie. After some detective work, they got actor Charles Gamora to admit that he played the gorilla in the film with intention to fool audiences into thinking it was a real gorilla. And all of the footage of Africa in the film was stolen from another movie. And the only original footage of the wild animals were not recorded in Africa, and they weren't even wild animals. They were recorded in a California zoo. There's a lion in the movie that attacks one of the expedition's cameramen, but that lion is Jackie, the MGM lion. And these were not even native African women, they are American actresses in blackface. And these gorillas are not even gorillas, they're orangutans. Ingagi was eventually taken out of theaters, but RKO had learned a valuable math lesson that Ape Man plus Damsel in Distress equals box office success, and 3 years later, King Kong was born. I gotta make a quick mention on Cannibal Holocaust, even though I don't really want to. This movie is looked at as the godfather of found footage horror. It's about a missing American film crew whose film reels are recovered in the Amazon rainforest after they've encountered a tribe of cannibals. The lore of this movie says that the footage was so realistic, the director was arrested and charged with murder until he could bring the actors into court to prove they were not dead. But there's supposedly no evidence that this court case actually happened. The director also claims he had the actors sign an agreement to go off the grid for a year to make it seem like they were dead, but the actors say they never agreed to anything like that and were actually in other productions during that time. What is true is that during its run in theaters, a French magazine speculated that Cannibal Holocaust was an actual snuff film, which brought it a ton of attention and intrigue. It's a really gross movie with a lot of sexual violence and a crazy amount of animal deaths that were all real. There's one with the actors decapitating a turtle, and it's cruel and it just keeps going and getting worse. I hated it. And because of that animal cruelty, the movie was banned in several countries for years. And those bans ended up bringing even more intrigue and contributed to the cult following it has today. I wasn't sure if it even made sense to include this in here because even though it was marketed as a documentary, it's clearly not once you start watching it. The majority of the movie is just a traditional film, but the use of found footage techniques in some of the scenes for sure confused people back in the day. And I'm sure some people clicked on my video expecting something to be said about Cannibal Holocaust, so this is for you. This TV show was so scary, it left kids with PTSD and tragically claimed a young life. Ghostwatch aired on Halloween night 1992 and presented itself as a live on-air investigation into a family tormented by an evil spirit. During the episode, a family living on the fictional Fox Hill Drive share with the production team their paranormal experiences with a demonic entity they've named Mr. Pipes. Although when the team investigates the home, no evidence pops up until we cut back to the studio and their call center claims that viewers have been reporting they saw a mysterious figure lurking in the corner of the children's bedroom. Keep in mind, this was before the found footage craze began with horror movies. It precedes the Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity, so if you remember how wild audience reactions were with those films, I'm sure you can imagine how freaked people were while watching Ghostwatch at home. This program pulled out all the stops to appear 100% authentic and was so convincing it led to over 30,000 panic panicked viewers calling in. The BBC had a pre-recorded message set up on their phone line to tell callers that the program was fake, but so many people called in, the line crashed, preventing the message from playing. People were livid about the program, saying the show betrayed the trust that the audience has within the BBC, and one caller apparently argued that although Ghostwatch was fake, they claimed the program was so messed up that it did summon real demons. Later, a report in the British Medical Journal discussed 2 cases of children who had developed PTSD due to Ghostwatch, which were the first ever reported cases of PTSD caused by a TV program. Most upsetting of all, one 18-year-old boy with a learning disability who watched the program took his own life 5 days later, leaving behind a note for his family saying, "If there are ghosts, I will be with you always as a ghost." Ghostwatch was never aired again, and the BBC disowned the program for decades, but you can find the full special on the Internet Archives, and there's a documentary covering the full story called Ghostwatch Behind the Curtains. This ruse goes back to the year 1911. Lost in the Arctic was advertised as a real documentary of a daring hunting expedition and a look into Eskimo life. These hunters harpoon a polar bear and find a starving teenage girl, and since she is too sick, as is Eskimo tradition according to this movie, the girl is sentenced to death by being put in a canoe and pushed out to open water. Film journals applauded the filmmakers for powering through such brutal conditions to deliver an instructive look into Eskimo customs. But they didn't do that. This Land of Eternal Ice was shot on the frozen shoreline of Lake Michigan. Audiences never caught wind that they had been duped, and the movie was only busted as a fraud decades later by film historians. Today, the 12-minute film is considered lost with no known surviving prints. The Hungarian film Mao the Real Man from 1995 is a presentation by an American historian who travels to China and stumbles across information that changes world history as we know it. He discovers that Chairman Mao had a secret twin who lived in Chicago and was connected with the mafia and swapped places with him during the Long March, then faked his death in 1976 and lived on as a 100-year-old monk with supernatural powers and a crystal inside his stomach. The end credits reveal that every word in the documentary is a lie, and then asks viewers to grade themselves based off of where in the film they realized they were being fooled. And if it took you until those credits to figure it out, God help you. The filmmakers hoped this would act as a demonstration that some people will mindlessly believe anything they're told if it's packaged with enough credibility, and it worked. Mao the Real Man became an award-winning film with critics and even renowned filmmakers admitting that it took them an embarrassingly long time into the film to realize the whole thing was a fraud. At this point, you've proven you can handle the untruth, but can you handle the truth? Because the truth is, one of these fake documentaries doesn't actually exist. It's not a fake documentary, it's a fake documentary. I completely made it up. And were you able to catch which one it was? If you figured it out and want to watch the full fake documentary, it'll be available to watch for all of my YouTube members on here, and I'll also put it in my Discord server, which is free to join. Both links will be in the description. Anyway, so sorry about that. Hope you still enjoyed this video. If you did, you should subscribe so that I'll have more subscribers. And if you want to see more videos from me, check out my last one where we talk about banned kids show episodes. I'll see you in this other video, which is totally real, and let's do this again sometime.